Zeitoun, page 165, Tuesday, September 6th. In the morning, after his prayer, Zeitoun made his way to the dogs across the street and fed them more of the dog food Todd had acquired for his rescued pet. When he paddled back to the house to pick up Nassar, he noticed Nassar was carrying his black duffel bag. Zeitoun nodded at him. "You ready to go?" Nassar said he was. He was ready to be evacuated. Zeitoun would be sad to see him go, but he was happy to know that his friend would be safe and that, even better, Zeitoun would no longer have to share his tent. Nassar got to the canoe, and they were off. They made their way to the post office parking lot. They had passed it together half-dozen times, and always Zeitoun had asked Nassar if he was prepared to leave. But he had not been ready, not until now. "There's your ride," Zeitoun said, pointing to an orange helicopter in the distance resting on the ground. They paddled closer and realized there was something strange about the helicopter. It was resting on its side. "Oh no," Nassar said. "The rotor was broken." The grass blackened all around it. "It crashed," Zeitoun said. "Odd." "It crashed," Nassar repeated in a whisper. They coasted toward it. There was no one near it, no sign that anyone had been hurt. There was no smoke, no rescue crew. The crash must have been the day before. All there was now was a mound of orange steel. Nassar would not fly out this day. They returned to the Claiborne house. Dazed, Zeitoun called Kathy. He couldn't decide if he should tell her about the helicopter. He knew it would upset her, so he chose not to. "You put the kids in school yet?" Kathy said she was trying, but it wasn't easy. Zeitoun exhaled loudly. "You're like the man who lost his camel and is looking for the rope," she said. It was one of his favorite expressions, and she relished using it against him. He would often say it when he felt Kathy was focusing on irrelevant details while ignoring the crux of the problem. He wasn't amused. "Come on, honey," he said. School wasn't the first thing on Kathy's mind. She had been determined that night before and all morning to convince her husband to leave the city. Mayor Nagin had ordered a forced evacuation of everyone remaining. "A forced evacuation," she repeated. Officials were concerned about the spread of E. coli, the risk of typhoid fever, cholera, dysentery. Unsanitary conditions would threaten the health of anyone still in the area. "I'm not drinking the water," he said. "What about the toxic waste?" she asked. "You know that crap buried underground there." She reminded him that parts of the city had been built on landfills containing arsenic, lead, mercury, barium, and other carcinogens. "What if that stuff leaches through?" Zeitoun didn't know what to say. "I'll be careful," he said. What he didn't say was that he was considering leaving. Everything was becoming more difficult, and there was less for him to do. Fewer people were left in the city, and fewer still needed help. There was only the matter of his properties, looking after them, and of course the dogs. Who would feed the dogs, if not him? For now, he told her it would be fine, that he would be careful, that he loved her and would call her in a few hours. He sat out alone for a while, and before long, at the corner of Canal and Scott, he encountered a small boat. It was a military craft, and 3 men aboard, a soldier, a man with a video camera, and one holding a microphone and a notebook. They waved Zeitoun down, and one of the men identified himself as a reporter. "What are you doing?" the reporter asked. "Just checking out friends' houses, trying to help," Zeitoun said. "Who are you working with?" the reporter asked. "Anybody," Zeitoun said. "I work with anybody." As he paddled back to Claiborne, a hope flickered within Zeitoun, and his siblings might see him on TV. Perhaps they would see what he was doing and that he had done something good by staying in his adopted city. The Zeitouns were proud, and there were plenty of siblings' rivalry that he had pushed them all to an array of achievements. All of them measured against the deeds of Muhammad. None of them had ever done something like that. None had achieved on his level. But Zeitoun felt again that perhaps this was his calling, that God had waited to put him here and now to test him in this way. And so he hoped, as silly as it seemed, that his siblings might see him like this, on the water, a sailor again, being useful, serving God. When Zeitoun got back to 5010 Claiborne, he saw a blue and white motorboat tied to the porch. When he entered the house, there was a man inside, a man he had never seen before. "Who are you?" Zeitoun asked. "Who are you?" the man asked. "This is my house," Zeitoun said. The man apologized. He introduced himself. His name was Ronnie, and he'd passed by the house one day looking for a place that might have a working phone. He'd seen the phone box above the water line and walked into the house. Since then, he'd been coming in periodically to make calls to his brother, a helicopter pilot. Ronnie was white, about 35, 6 feet, 200 pounds. He told Zeitoun that he worked for a tree company. Zeitoun couldn't think of a good reason to ask Ronnie to leave. Zeitoun was happy to see anyone alive and well in the city, so he left Ronnie in the house and went upstairs to see if the water worked. He found Nassar on the second floor. "You meet this man Ronnie?" Zeitoun asked. Nassar had found him to be agreeable enough. They both felt that there was a strength in numbers, and again, if the man wanted to use the phone occasionally, who were they to prevent him from coming? from communicating with the outside world. And possibly the water in the bathroom was still functioning. Zeitoun hadn't even thought to check it sooner. It was a miracle. He told Nassar he was going to take a shower. Be quick, Nurse said. I'm next. No shower had ever felt better. Zeitoun washed away all the sweat and grime and what he assumed was a fair amount of oil and raw sewage. Afterwards, he came downstairs. All yours, he told Nassar. He picked up the phone and called his brother in Spain. He wanted to check with him quickly before calling Kathy. Again, Ahmad tried to convince him to leave. Do you realize what images we're seeing on TV? He asked. Zeitoun assured him that he was far away from that kind of chaos, not counting the armed man at the Shell station. Zeitoun had seen almost no danger in all the time he had been canoeing around the city. Hey, he said, excited, I might be on TV. Someone just interviewed me. Look for it. Tell Kathy. Ahmad sighed. So you won't go? Not yet. Ahmad knew better than to argue, but he did want to remind his brother that even if he felt safe now, danger could come at any time. There were roving gangs of armed men, he said. That's all the media could talk about. That it was the Wild West out there. Ahmad felt powerless, and he hated the feeling. He knew his little brother considered him overly cautious. Won't you please consider leaving for the sake of your beautiful family before something happens? Zeitoun was holding the piece of paper with Kathy's Phoenix number on it. He needed to call her before she started worrying. He was already 10 minutes late. He was about to get off the phone with Ahmad when he heard Nassar's voice from the porch. He was talking to someone outside. Zeitoun, Nassar called. What? Zeitoun said. Come here, Nassar said. These guys want to know if we need water. Zeitoun assumed it was more men like himself and Nassar, people with boats who were roaming around trying to help. When he put the phone down and looked toward the front porch, he saw a group of men, all of them armed, bursting into the house. Zeitoun hung up the phone and walked toward the door.